So KSAP works doing a lot of training with law enforcement and training across the community, and we also work in partnership with the cabinet and with victim service providers. And we've seen a huge increase in reporting of cases, both labor and sex trafficking cases, foreign nationals and U.S. citizens. And a number of those were documented in a recent report by the cabinet that was submitted to the LRC. The easiest way to understand labor, human trafficking or modern day slavery is to understand that it's exploitation for the purposes of either commercial sex, stripping, pornography, or prostitution, or for forced labor or services. And so the trafficker uses force, fraud, or coercion to get that gain, either through commercial sex or through labor and services. And so typically, internationally, there's equal amounts really of sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Labor trafficking is often more hidden because law enforcement aren't going out and asking people, are you being paid? Where are you sleeping tonight? Do you feel like you can leave, or is somebody holding your documents? But they are going after prostitution and drug crimes, which are connected to sex trafficking. And so they're more likely to find the sex trafficking cases, even though those are often hidden as well. Well, I think it is a trend right now because our awareness has been raised. There's always been slavery, unfortunately, in the United States and in our world. We just, I think, thought that it had ended. And so that awareness is new, that people understand that there are people being exploited for labor and sex in our own communities, in our small towns, in our cities. And so I think it's part of that outrage that people have that this could happen in 2013. As we also see culture being used as an excuse for rape, for domestic violence. Even in our country, we glorify people like Charlie Sheen, who have a record of domestic violence. So it's not unusual to have culture used as an excuse for violence against women and vulnerable people. So that doesn't surprise me. But the reality is that anytime someone is coming forward and saying, this is not okay, I'm not safe in this situation, I'm being hurt, they are also a part of that culture, and they're saying this is not acceptable. Is that labor trafficking is different from just a bad job. Or different from getting a better chance at a life. You may come from a hovel in a poor country, but when you come to the United States, you may live in a nicer house, but if your liberty is taken away, if you can't control who you talk to, if you're worked literally to death, if your freedom is taken away, that is the essence of this crime. And so it doesn't matter if you're in a little bit better house, if you can't talk to your loved ones, if you're terrified of what will happen to you, it's not a better situation. But what we know, and again, I just want to stress this, when you and I woke up this morning, we probably chose where we slept, what we ate, if we listened to somebody on the phone, on the radio, if we talked to loved ones, we chose where we wanted to work. We weren't worried that if we took a wrong turn or if we complained to our boss that our family members would be threatened or that we would be deported. And that's the difference, is that in a labor trafficking situation, people's liberty is broken down. So again, they feel less than human. And oftentimes kids who are runaways, within 3 months of being on the streets, 90% of them will turn to what's called survival sex. They'll perform a sex act to stay somewhere, to get a meal, to get bus fare. So that's our vulnerable population. And I will tell you, it's from Pikeville to Paducah in our big cities and our small towns. I was just in Eastern Kentucky in Pikeville and heard about cases where children were being exchanged for drugs by their parents. So it looks differently in all of our communities, but a lot of it is occurring on the internet. They're sold on places like Backpage. And of course they're disguised. Backpage is similar to Craigslist. So it's an online site where you can, sell your tractor or you can buy a child. But under our federal law and our state law, everyone under 18 in commercial sex, in stripping or pornography or prostitution is a victim of trafficking. You can't consent to that. So those are all correct. And there's no need actually to show force, fraud, or coercion, even though it's always usually there. So even if you have a child who's out on the street in a park, who's picked up by police, who's 16, a boy who is exchanging sex acts for money and says, I'm doing this on my own, that is still an exploited child. There's still an adult buying that child. And so that child is a victim of trafficking. They will look at, was the parent failing to protect the child? What was going on that led to this child to be in such a vulnerable situation? They will also partner with law enforcement to go after the trafficker, including the person who's buying that child, because that person is also culpable under our human trafficking laws. So we see some overlap with the crime of prostitution, and our good law enforcement agencies, Lexington and Louisville Police, do great work where they screen all prostitution cases to really see, is there coercion here? Is this person doing this of their own free will? Are they being beaten? People in prostitution often have to meet a quota for their pimp, and if they don't meet the quota, they get beaten up. That's not a job. That would be indicator of trafficking, because again, somebody is not doing this of their own.
They want to.
Correct.